Welcome to the channel and my review of VGF Gamer's Proflex silicone skins for game controllers, namely in this case PS4 and Xbox One. So I saw these adverts quite a few times on Instagram and Facebook, and I was curious as to how good these were, so I thought I'd buy 3 of these skins and test them over a period of 3 months and give you guys some feedback. This is basically the package they came in, all 3 skins, and the first skin, which is for a standard Xbox One controller, is called Show Me the Money, which is obviously a Cuba Gooding Jr. line from Jerry Maguire, but it's quite a nice skin. I was a little worried with this discoloration on the back initially. Obviously I don't want that coming off on my controller. So Proflex Silicon Skin number 2 was for PlayStation 4 controller, and this one's called Red Skulls, and it looks a little bit lighter in colour. I was expecting it to be a bit darker than this. It looks a little bit faded than I expected, but it seems okay. And Proflex Silicon Skin number 3 is also for an Xbox One controller. This is called Tie-Dye, this particular design. So again, very kind of flexible. Now the idea of these things are you just slip them over your existing controller and protect them from dust, grease, and generally getting dirty or chipped. On top of that, they also have the benefit of quite a smooth, grippy surface, and the rear of these skins also have grips on them as well. So it kind of makes it a little bit easier to hold some of these smooth controllers. That's the idea behind them anyway. And obviously I wanted to test these, give you my feedback, and let you know how easy I found them to install and obviously play with. So first up, I thought I'd fit the Red Skulls skin to my generic PS4 controller, or PS4 Pro controller, not that it's any different to a standard. And these are quite stretchy, these things, so you can kind of play around with them, pull them over. Must admit I was getting a little bit worried as I was doing this, but they will actually go over quite nicely with a little bit of a stretch here and there. So once you get the skin fitted, he says, as he almost gets it done, it's just a matter of kind of pulling it into place. Now this actually was a really good fit on the PlayStation 4 controller, the Red Skulls design. So as a fit, I'd say this is a 99.9% fit, really nice fit. And it actually feels better than the standard controller for me, because I struggle to hold these because they're quite small, and that grip actually helps me a little bit too. Doesn't increase the form factor much. The other thing you do get is that obviously the buttons, the triangle, circle, square button and X button, a little bit more sunk than they normally would be. So far no grime off of the skin itself. So next up, I thought I'd fit one of the special controllers. So this is the Luna controller, which form factor wise is slightly larger than a standard Xbox controller. So I was keen to see whether this skin would fit a Luna controller or one of the special editions. Bit criminal obviously putting this skin on a Luna controller, because the Luna looks fantastic anyway, but slip this over. This one's a little bit easier to fit. It's not as tight as that PlayStation 4 controller, which could prove to be a bit of a problem. So it's a bit loose at the back there. So there is a bit of room for movement, and this is actually a larger than normal form factor controller. So I suspect when I put this on the generic, it's going to be even looser. So it looks quite nice. You might argue it doesn't look as nice as the Luna, but it kind of looks okay. You can see there's a bit of flex there at the top by the battery compartment. So not quite a perfect fit. I'd say this is kind of a 98% fit. Doesn't feel too bad. Feels quite nice to hold, quite grippy. I don't mind it. Obviously the first thing I notice here is that the circles around the analogs, you do actually feel the analogs brushing those. So it might take a while to wear those in a bit, or at least wear out that circle a bit, and that there is a little bit of resistance there. The buttons themselves, again, they're not too bad on the Xbox, because obviously the Xbox stick out a lot more than the PlayStation buttons, so it's kind of an okay fit there for the buttons as well. So the final skin I'm going to try, this is on the generic Xbox One controller. This is from the Xbox One S generic white console that I'm using here. So just slip this skin over, and I've got a feeling that this is actually going to be quite loose compared to that Luna controller, because the Luna controller is slightly larger. Now what I didn't do, unfortunately, and I couldn't at the time, I was trying to order Elite controller skin as well, which is why I landed up with 2 of these Xbox skins instead. And yeah, that's pretty loose there. It's very loose. Just need to pull it over here as well. Of course, it got stuck on the analog there. Pull that over, you can see it kind of, have to stretch it out a bit. It's not a great fit. It's okay, but you can see there's a lot of movement here, and it's kind of, you know, crossing over some of the buttons slightly. It's not the best of fits. I'd say that's about a 95% fit, which I would have expected it to fit this controller better than that Luna controller, because obviously this is what these skins are designed for. It's not dreadful, but it's loose, and you can feel that. So after actually spending 3 months with these skins, I actually found them, you know, they're quite nice to play with. They've got a good feel to them. They don't feel, obviously they're silicone, so they don't feel like that rubber icky feel you get from a generic Xbox One Elite controller, which is obviously a very sticky type rubber. This is a very smooth type rubber, and the ribs on the rear of the grips actually do help with gripping these controllers. Obviously on Luna it's got a really good grip anyway, so you kind of argue that, but for a generic controller like this standard Xbox One S white controller, this is quite a nice feel to it. It's easier to hold than your standard Xbox One S or Xbox One controller, and it gives it a little bit more depth, not much. But the one thing I did notice during play was initially the analogs are a little restricted on movement with these skins on the Xbox controllers, so I did find it, you know, it was a little bit of a problem. Not massive, but just a little bit of a feel, and some people might not like that. Button wise, it fit quite well. Obviously, like I said, between the generic and this Luna, the Luna was a much better fit, and it played a lot better. Didn't get in the way of the triggers on either of the controllers. PlayStation 4 controller by far was the best fit of these VGF gamer designs. It fit nigh on perfect, and I had no issues with the analogs or anything. It plays quite nicely. The only thing I would say is that obviously because you've got, you know, this raised silicone sat around the controller, the already not so deep PlayStation buttons, e.g. the triangle, the square, the circle and the X, there's not a lot of lift from the controller once you put this skin on, so you can kind of, you know, lose the feel of that button. Some people may not like that, but skin wise it fit really well. It fit quite tightly. This is the controller right now as of 3 months of play with this skin on. And you know, you can clean these, you can wash them with washing up liquid. I did that a couple of times, didn't cause the skins any problems. Also, the underneath of these skins, where you saw in the previous images you had kind of that black mess sometimes around the cutouts in the silicone, they didn't at any point rub off onto the controller, even the Luna controller, so I had no issues with that or no concerns. Now, as you can see here, you know, this is the back end side of the PlayStation 4 controller. Really nice fit. I didn't have any complaints in terms of fit on PS4. The biggest gripes I had were relevant to the Xbox One controllers. The Luna, as I said, or if you've got a special controller like a Luna, they fit quite well. You know, it is an almost perfect fit, but you will feel some resistance around the analogs initially. The generic controller, so the very basic Xbox One controller, definitely is a lot looser. It could get annoying for you in terms of its looseness around the battery compartment. Now obviously when you're replacing batteries, you do have a bit of movement there, obviously, to put the battery cover back on and off. It is a little bit fiddly, but not massively, so it's not a big issue. But as you can see here from the Show Me the Money skin on the Luna, doesn't quite line up with those buttons on the rear of the controller. Not a massive issue. I've plugged this in and charged it and it hasn't given me any problems, but you know, it's just a little bit of overlap, but definitely a lot better on the Luna controller than the generic. So this is the generic after 3 months. As you can see, it still looks pretty colourful. There's a little bit of wear on it, not anything particularly massive. You know, it still feels nice, it's not grotty. I've washed this once or twice, no issues with it snapping back into place. It still is, unfortunately, considerably looser than that Luna controller, as I was saying, so not the best of fits. The other thing I did out of interest, and just in case some of you guys asked me is it possible, was tried the generic Xbox One controller skin on an Elite controller, and it didn't fit very well at all. It was extremely tight but also very untidy. Now VGF gamers do an Elite controller skin specifically for Elites as well, so that's available at their website. I communicate later in this video. So in terms of a review, there are two products here. We've got the Xbox One controller skin and the PlayStation 4 controller skin. So as a result, I'm going to do two different review scores. So first up is the Xbox One Proflex controller skin. Quite a nice selection of designs for this. You know, there's some okay designs there. My favourite was this Show Me the Money, the tie-dye. It's kind of okay. In terms of functionality, e.g. protecting the controller, it does its job well, but obviously, as you've seen in the video for the generic controller, which is what this skin is for, it actually is a little bit looser than it should be, and for that reason I'd give it an 8 out of 10 in terms of score. My favourite skin was definitely the PlayStation 4 Red Skull skin. One, I really liked the design. I would have liked to have seen some deeper blacks in this skin, but in terms of functionality, protecting the controller and overall fit, as well as playability, it was a really tight controller skin, gave me really nice grip with a PS4 controller, which I do really struggle with because I find those too small. But I'm now permanently using this skin on my controller because I actually like the benefits that come with it, plus I like the aesthetic. Now there are a number of different designs also on VGF Gamers website that you can get. They do this in green as well, this red skulls, they call it green skulls obviously, and for me this controller skin is a 9 out of 10. Really like this. Now VGF Gamers can be found online at vgfworld.com, where you can see all of their selection of skins, including those Elite controller skins. Now I would like to point out that this is a self-funded review. I actually paid for all of these skins myself. In total, with shipping, this was £45 to get the free skins. They did ship from the US though, and in shipping from the US I had customs fees to pay in order to get them released to me, which unfortunately added up to an additional £16 on top of my £45 spend, taking me to £61. So do bear that in mind if you're ordering outside of the US. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for watching the review. If you enjoyed it or found it in any way helpful, maybe drop a like, maybe subscribe.